He's a mixture of Scotch and Irish. I'm not sure if I believe him. He's with Higher Eye Training and Consulting. Radcliffe is the founder and CEO, and he has delivered training for businesses, educators, and young people in Asia, Southeast Asia, the Americas, and Sub-Saharan Africa. As a community volunteer, Radcliffe has hands-on knowledge about the challenges facing young people across the world. He has used this knowledge to strengthen CSR initiatives for companies across various sectors. He has been featured on CBC Newsworld, Business News Network, and the CIM magazine. Radcliffe has an honors business degree and a certificate in strategic alliances from New York University, and has worked with companies such as HBC, Zurich, TELUS, IBM, AT&T, and Canada Post. Please join me in welcome.
Thank you. I want to thank Wayne and Bruce for booking me right after lunch. It's always the best time. Thanks, guys. So I guess I'm going to have to, if I'm controversial, blame them. The topic is kind of provocative to a lot of people. What gives me the authority to speak on this? I do quite a bit of business in China. Our company's revenues, half are in Sub-Saharan Africa, half are in China. We're going to be in Beijing 2 weeks from now again. So we're there on the ground. We don't follow the media hype. We actually go to places and do field research. So this is based off of actual field research. So key points I want to come across during this presentation. So if the light power goes out, you know what this presentation was about. There's 3 key points here. Point number 1 is culture and history matter. Too often we talk about business and social responsibility as if this doesn't involve people and their history. What happened to you 50 years ago, 10 years ago, yesterday, impacts you today. Canadian companies, they can compete with China and Africa or emerging markets. They can partner with them. But we have to focus CSR on the young people. And you're going to see that's going to be my theme throughout the whole section. And Canadian companies have to do a better job of using this diversity of Canada to have success in emerging markets. And we're going to show proof from Stats Canada, etc. on that. So these are the 3 key points we want to come across. And we state these 3 points because Canada is the best country in the world at risk mitigation, process analysis. We're the best. And we have some of the best lawyers, the best process minds in the world. That's why our banks didn't tank in 2008. We're excellent at that. But we lack creativity and innovation and risk-taking sometimes. You need some risk adverse. We also need to be innovative. When you go to different markets, it just can't be another 800-page report. We actually get some things done for once. So this approach is to show, yes, we need the reports, but yes, we need some action. Brief agenda, China's history, China's investment in Africa, the perceived CSR weakness for Canadian companies in Africa, what are youth going through, and what are our competitive advantages. Without going through a long story, China's history in Africa. We think about China now because we see China's growth. I don't have to explain to everyone what's going on with China right now. Their massive growth, they will be the world's #1 economy in about 5 years, it looks like. However, we act as if this is just yesterday. In ancient times, China was more advanced than the West. This is not the first time for China leading the world. In the 60s, as African countries gained independence, China had 19 official embassy offices in Africa before the West did. So this is a picture here of the foreign minister of China in Africa in 1962. But in ancient times, we see that during their dynastic periods, they found coins in Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia showing that China and Africa were conducting trade. There's also evidence in ancient Nubian civilizations that Africa and China did have diplomatic and trade relations. So this is nothing new. It's only newer now because back then they didn't have Facebook, YouTube, Twitter to report what was going on. I don't think the Pharaoh had Twitter on his throne. So China's investment in Africa today, I think we could see 3-4 times growth. I think if we take 2010 numbers, it's 4.5 times growth in trade. No other countries trade with Africa more aggressively than China. Now there's controversy, I'm not denying that, but hardcore numbers show you this. And you see some real projects. These are real projects that people actually touch, feel, and see every day. I know Banro Corp will go through some projects that they've done in Africa. And this is a key point for us to note as we start talking about Africa, is that there are real things that China's doing, just not the things that we know, some of the issues we've seen in Zambia with some of the mines, some of the issues we've seen in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. There are issues, but there are also some real tangible benefits you're seeing on the ground. And this is the #1 benefit right now, BRICS. So the BRIC countries included, formally introduced South Africa into BRIC, which is now BRICS. And South Africa becomes the conduit to the rest of Africa. This means for your firms, or your partner firms, or your clients, that's, if you're in South Africa and Africa right now, you're looking at the other 4 markets where you're looking at us. It also is a potential threat to a lot of our mining investment, because China and Brazil and India continue their need for more capacity, more resources. If you're South Africa, who are you going to go to now? Who you mean we're open to speak to? Because they've opened the door to put you in the world's biggest alliance. Not the biggest, but one of the most powerful alliances. And China's role in Africa is viewed as superior to many Africans. So Demissa Moyo, who wrote the book Dead Aid, very popular. She's one of the most influential people in the world according to Time magazine. You see what she says here? That, yes, there's some issues with China, but at the end of the day, it's just not aid. China's actually delivering projects. We see a dam is real. A school is real. You can't deny that. Now, you got some issues about what they're doing about it, but if you're an everyday person on the ground struggling, you really don't care about the politics behind it. You care that I have a bridge to get me to the other side of town now. That's real. But China's also making some cultural investments. So the Chinese have actually brought students to Ethiopia to learn traditional Ethiopian dancing, to learn traditional dances from South Africa, to learn about the ballet, to learn about the language and culture. But one thing, when you're in China, what you realize is the Chinese are very smart business people. They might be communist politically, but they're capitalists economically. Money is religion in China. And what they're doing is they're making the young people be aware of the different cultures around the world. So if you start off day one comfortable dancing the Ethiopian music, when you're 32 years old, it won't be weird for you to go to Ethiopia and do business. But yet in our country, we learn very little about Africa. So when we're 45 years old, we're saying, Africa? You have a puzzled look on your face. Then here I was in Beijing 2008. We were teaching to teachers in China about African and Caribbean culture. They brought me there for 3 weeks to teach them about the basics of Caribbean and African culture. So that was a surprise for me to get a call from Beijing to want to talk about this. So it shows you that China's more than just financial, it's also cultural investments. So on the Canadian CSR side, like I said, we have some great examples. Banro's going to go to one of the favorite examples, I think. Care Canada's done some great work as well. No, the work we are doing in childcare, maternal health, HIV, AIDS, etc., ensuring that young girls are rising out of poverty quicker and faster and getting educated is vital. No one's saying that you pick one or the other. No, I'm saying that Care Canada can't address every issue that Africa faces. So we're not saying that's not important, but what we are saying is that the young people in Africa, and you should note that we interact with at least 4,000 young people on a monthly basis in Africa and in other emerging markets. Here's what African youth have to say. Basically, stop pigeonholing me. We know we got some issues in our country. We know we also want to get on with it and get on with the path to economic growth and opportunity. And when the youth are ignored, we're now seeing what happens. No, it's really funny because when we started this company 4 years ago and we said youth issues, we got weird looks from government officials and private sector. Now those same people are calling me saying, what do we do to prevent this from happening in our country? And I always say to people, why are you so worried about youth revolution for? You're worried because you're not doing anything for young people. If I sit here and I go, Bruce, where's my computer for the presentation? And Bruce goes, it's right here. I go, oh, it's here. I can't complain. If it's not here, I can complain. What are your companies and organizations and clients doing to ensure that the young people have opportunity? Some of these protests are democratic. A lot of it's economic. There's no opportunity for young people. And I'm going to read to you a famous reggae song that was written in Jamaica in 1998. It was banned by the government of Jamaica because Jamaica has protests going on. Trinidad has protests going on. There's people protesting in Argentina right now, young people. And here's what he says to the reggae artist. Look into my eyes, tell me what you see. Can you feel my pain? Am I your enemy? Give me a better way, because things are really bad. The only friend I know is the gun I have. Listen to my voice, this is not a threat. Now you see the 9, are you worried yet? You've been talking about you want the war to cease, but when you show us hope, we will show you peace. This song was banned in like 4 countries in the Caribbean. That's what young people are thinking about right now. They're getting frustrated. And they're getting frustrated, and you should be worried about this, because these are companies that we deal with, and talking in the World Bank, here are some of the costs that they are incurring when these things fail and fall on their face. CSR is not an annual report that says, here are nice fancy charts and graphs. It's getting on the ground and getting dirty and getting the work done. It's calling Care Canada and saying, let's work together on a project. It's teaming up with Hatch and saying, here, what are you doing? How can we team up with you and work with you better? It just can't be reports all day. I can't read any more reports. Let's get on the ground and get some work done. Youth challenge number 1, unemployment. It's just not me. Consular General of Ghana has stated this. So we talked about informal businesses being formed across emerging markets. Here's an example. No, they have great business ideas, they're not formally set up. World Bank states 200 million young Africans will be out of work. Under 20. Note that Africa's population, 60% is under 24 years old. And some of those Middle Eastern countries having the problems right now, half the population is under 18. Look who's leading the protest. Youth unemployment in Africa has grown by 34%. That's a problem. For a continent that's growing on average between 6 to 11% per year, but youth unemployment is tripling the rate of economic growth, that's a problem. Because those are your future employees, your future suppliers, future government officials one day. So how do we approach CSR? We are a youth-based company. We focus on issues facing young people. That's what we do. We're not saying take away from environmental and all that. We latch on side of that and get the young people involved. So the first step we take is a youth advisory board. And we took this model from State Farm, who was a youth advisory board in the US, and we kind of altered it up. The idea of the youth advisory board is to get young people involved into the initiatives and projects they actually want in their communities. And then you taking your expertise and saying, okay, what are the wants and needs, and merge them together. So the young people act as a board. Before you come with a new ideal, you ask them. And the amazing thing we've realized, hundreds of companies around the world say, how do we get more young people wanting our projects or wanting to get involved in our projects? I say, ask them. How do we ask young people anything? You're too lazy, you're always on Facebook. Well, how come you're not there? That's where they are, that's the reality. The youth gain experience, you get real first-hand experience instead of the cloud. You get to hear what's real. We developed a CSR program. We have a 6-step CSR program that develops business and entrepreneurial skills for young people. And we train educators how to deliver that to young people, to get them turned on to academics in school, or turned on to get into business. And we use pop culture and things that they like to get them involved. And at-risk youth training. Because in many of these countries, the youth are at risk. They're on the verge of turning to illegal activity. Crime rates are going up everywhere. So this is our 3-pronged approach. Youth advisory board, we help get the board set up, treat them like a real board, get them involved. It doesn't cost you much money because you have to pay them $400 grand a year to show for 2 meetings, like some other boards. I'm trying to get one of those hookups, by the way. I'm trying to get one of those. Let's be honest about that. No, just get them involved, get them the skills, and let's train the people who deal with the young people every day. So the last point here is about Canada's distinct advantage versus China. I mean, I go to China quite a bit. There's not much black people in China. Not much black guys with dreadlocks in China. Which is why everyone there wants to touch my hair. That's my new business in China. Touch Rad's hair, 50 US per stroke.
How much?
50 US. No, Canadian, we're better than the US. According to the Census of Canada, no, we have over 1.1 million people of African Caribbean descent here. Why don't we use that when we do anything in Africa? It's amazing when I come off the plane in Johannesburg and people don't believe me that I'm from Canada. I have to show them my passport and say, why? Because we didn't know any blacks were in Canada. Especially blacks who went to university, who have skills and training. I was in Botswana, people did not believe me I was from Canada. They thought I was Jamaican or American. Till they hear my Jamaican accent, they're like, okay. So what we're trying to say here, we have to leverage our diversity. On top of that, we have great young talent in this country who they want to do business in Africa. They want to get experience in Africa. We just did a survey of 400 young people on Facebook, on our Facebook friends list. And 68% of them said they want to get job experience in an emerging market. How many of your companies are reaching out to them? Most young people don't know who your companies are. We can help bridge that gap and get them involved. And we're going to talk to Hatch about potential opportunities to do this. Let's get the young people engaged now. Because you cannot go to another country and say, we got all these great CSR programs, and you're doing nothing with the young people here. Because culture is global. So if you are from Zambia and you live in Toronto and Vancouver, and their grandfather comes and says, hey, there's mining companies here in Zambia doing work. They're doing nothing here. That's a problem. As well, what is also a challenge is, often we see with CSR programs, we say we're going to go to the community leaders. And that is true. You should deal with the community. But many times, the community leaders and the young people have a huge generational divide. There's one here. Right? I'm only 37, and I'm yelling at my niece who's 18, no, stop texting when I'm talking to you. Right? But that's what she's doing. So can you imagine some of these countries where the parent generation never owned a wireless device, and now their son or daughter has a mobile phone, they're texting, they want to go on Facebook all the time. So there's a huge divide between the community leaders and many of the young people. That's why we have the youth advisory board set up, so the young people feel comfortable saying exactly what they want without the internal politics of the community. Because that is a problem. I think most of you on the ground will notice that in almost every country. In Jamaica, when I'm there, it leads to war sometimes. They get really upset with each other. So we're saying, you know what? Culture transcends. And you know what? It does matter to a lot of young people when I come into a meeting room and they see me in Africa. They see me in the Caribbean. They see me in Belize. They see me in Korea. They see me in Malaysia. It means something to them because they're saying, hold on, you're not the norm. But what you're delivering is valuable stuff that I can actually use. So we're saying that we're imploring you to start looking at the diversity here. Whether it be cultural diversity, language diversity, experience diversity, leverage it. It's our competitive advantage over anyone else on the planet Earth. And we can help bridge that. So what are the benefits of how we approach things? Reduces risk of protest. I mean, you want to be proactive. You don't want to wait till kids are on the street pouring gasoline all over the place. Especially in the mining sector, you just can't pick up your mine and move it. Right? You could pick up a bank and be virtual. You can't pick up a mine. As well, you know, the skills that the young people are gaining, they're more employable, and they can create revenue-generating businesses that are formal, that create tax revenue and jobs locally in an economy. We know from World Bank data that we address at-risk youth, we reduce GDP, 7% of GDP could be spent on fighting crime, or healthcare costs, social costs, etc. In Jamaica, it's 14.8%. It costs them in GDP. If you have a GDP of $30 billion, that's a lot of money. And you know, it saves you money in recruiting costs to get new talent, to get procurement. And I said this on BNN. No, one of these young people are going to be the leaders of the community. If they have a bad experience with you, or you're perceived to have a bad experience with them, their memory's long. So these are the benefits that we believe we derive to companies in finance, banking. So we're saying if you're in finance, you know, you're funding projects, get young people involved so they understand what you're thinking about. If you're in infrastructure, get the young people involved now. Because young people connect best to young people. So get them involved together. Instead of just, well, I know what's best for you, listen to me. We have a youth advisory board, and actually any presentation I always give, my advisory board reviews every presentation before I deliver it to make sure it addresses what they want. And then of course I gotta feed them sometimes too. So the key points again, culture and history matter. You know, China doesn't have a history of colonializing Africa. Don't think Africans don't, they may not say it to you directly, but they think about that all the time. Canadian companies use the young people you have here. Use a youth focus approach to CSR, because many of the countries you want to do business in, over half the population is young people. So if the young people are not getting skilled and addressed today, how's your company going to manage in 15 years in that market? Where are you going to get your skills from? Oh, you have to import people from Canada to go work in that market. How much more money would that cost you? that $30,000 a year salary, $10,000 changes big time if you're gonna call me to come to the middle of a hotspot to go work for you. My price kind of changes, doesn't it? So you want to address that now. And the last point, and the young people told me to stress this at the end again. Engage them. They're sitting there saying, we want help. We want to be able to help. We're not lazy. We want to get involved in financing, development, legal. They want to get involved in all of this, but they don't know how. We know how. We're a conduit to the young people. We have some credibility with them from dealing with. You can see from my presentation style, I present mainly to young people most of the time. Because young people are the hardest audience in the world, because they will call you out in 2 seconds if you're boring. They will tweet while you're talking, this guy sucks. Right? And if I don't get their attention in the first 2 minutes, they're going to become the kid that you're going to be worried about in your community. So this is what we do. We know we can help, we have helped, and we know we can help you. So if you're interested in getting youth involved in your CSR initiatives, contact us. Please engage us, because this is the future of your company and your legacy, also the future of our society. Thank you very much. I'll take one. We're going to take one?
Sure. Just a real quick.
He put his hand up real quick.
I did.
His hand up with a minute to go get his hand up.
No, the reason I put my hand up is I just read the white paper that came out in China on its foreign aid. It came out a couple of days ago. Guardian's written about it. The paper's quite good, but as related to your presentation, I'm curious. They have basically described their aid as solidarity packages, as opposed to the reason they've invested so much in Africa is not to gain access to Africa's resources, but to present very low interest loans in solidarity, as China has more of a cultural relationship with these sub-Saharan African nations than the U.S. and Canada and other Western countries. And I'm wondering if that's really actually playing out on the ground. How do the youth in certain sub-Saharan African countries feel about Chinese companies operating there as opposed to Canadian companies operating there?
Well, okay, good question. I'll answer very quickly because I know we got time. Number one is most of the young people have a negative view of China's view in Africa. They feel it's only benefiting the same old top of the line in government. Most of them feel that way. But at the same time, they're saying, but at least something's getting done. So the problem is not so much the Chinese. They say, okay, look at China do what they want to do, but it's not trickling down. That's local governance again.
Right. It's
the private sector companies, the good ones, like a Banro, who they're seeing they're actually doing something. As far as Canada goes, Canada's not a brand that's well known in Africa.
Right.
I mean, if I say BlackBerry, they say, yeah. Do you know that's a company called Research in Motion? Huh?
Right.
Right? Even if I say that here in Canada. So Canada's brand not that known to the young people on the ground. When they think of someone who looks like me, they think of African Americans or Bob Marley, right? So on the ground in Africa, you don't hear someone like, what's Canada doing here? But when we do expose ourselves and put ourselves out there, we get better reaction from the young people that are saying, oh, look, they understand that we're beside this behemoth called the USA. We have all these resources, but yet we manage to have a pretty good society here. But that's what the last election, what they're saying about during the campaign, right? But in general, we have a pretty good society here. So when they hear more about Canada, and with a mix of different cultures, different languages, and a natural resource powerhouse that technically should not be the top 10 biggest economy in the world, but we are because we manage things properly, they get excited. We have to get out there and tell them, and it has to be the right people delivering the message. It can't be the same old boring guy. That was my Irish.
Okay, so our next presentation is Avoiding Corruption in International Mining Projects.